Hey friends, welcome back to Hot Flash, your short but scorching dive into LGBTQ plus history, rights, and culture. And I'm Joshua Robert, the host of Hot Air. And today's episode is powerful because we are honoring two absolute icons of queer resistance, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. You may have heard their names, especially when I did the episode about the Stonewall Riots, and you may know that they were at the Stonewall Riots, but their stories go so much deeper. They're filled with activism, heartbreak, joy, struggle, resilience, and a bold as hell fight for queer liberation. So, as I like to say, buckle up, because for the next 10-ish minutes, we're going to go back to where it all began on the streets of New York City in the heat of oppression, rage, glitter, and glory. So let's hit it. Part 1. Let's meet Marsha and Sylvia. We're starting by cozying up to our heroines. Marsha P. Johnson, born in 1945 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Assigned male at birth, she moved to NYC after high school with just a bag of clothes and $15. She was black, poor, gender nonconforming, and at the time when just being yourself could get you arrested or killed, she still showed up in sequins, flowers, and joy. She called herself a drag queen, a street queen, and later a transvestite. That was a term that was used in the 60s and 70s. Today, we call them transgender or non-binary. But Marsha always said, the P stands for pay it no mind. That was her response when people asked about her gender. That's so cool. What's the P in Marsha P. Johnson stand for? Pay it no mind, girl. Move it along. And then there's Sylvia Rivera, born in 1951 in New York City to a Puerto Rican and Venezuelan family. Sylvia lost her mother to suicide at just 3 years old and was raised by her grandmother, who rejected her for being too feminine. She ran away at age 11 and survived on the streets through sex work. It was there that she found her queer family, people like Marsha. Marsha and Sylvia met in the late 60s and became inseparable. Two trans femmes of color surviving, resisting, and caring for their community in a world that wanted them erased. Not unlike how it currently feels today. Part 2. Stonewall and the Spark. Now, let's talk Stonewall real quick, the moment that changed everything. You can also go listen to my previous episode all about the Stonewall Riots. It was June 28th, 1969, the Stonewall Inn, a mafia-owned gay bar in Greenwich Village. It was one of the only places that queer folks could go and be themselves. Police raids were common, cops would storm in, beat people, arrest them for wearing gender-inappropriate clothing, and publish their names in the paper. Lives were completely ruined. I cannot believe publishing their names in the paper. But that night, that one specific night, the community had had enough. As police tried to arrest and brutalize patrons, somebody, and we may never know exactly who, threw a brick or a shot glass or shouted back. Some say it was Marsha. Some say it was a black butch lesbian. What we do know is Sylvia Rivera was there, Marsha was there, and the queens fought back. And what followed was 6 days of riots and resistance in the streets, a firestorm of queer rage that had been building for decades. And it wasn't just white, cisgender, gay men who were fed the fuck up. It was drag queens, trans women, sex workers, homeless youth, queer people of color. The list goes on. It was our community saying, we will not take this anymore. Now, Stonewall was not the first act of queer resistance, but it was the most explosive, and it sparked the modern LGBTQ plus rights movement as we know it today. Part 3. Aftermath and activism. After the riots, Marsha and Sylvia didn't fade into the background. They definitely didn't. They got louder. They co-founded STAR, which stands for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which I know we don't say transvestite anymore, but that was what it was called. One of the first organizations in the US to advocate for trans rights, homeless, queer youth, and incarcerated LGBTQ plus people. They didn't just advocate, they housed people. Marsha and Sylvia opened the Star House, a spot in a rundown building where they fed, clothed, and sheltered queer youth cast out by their families. They did this with no funding, no corporate sponsors, no rainbow capitalism, just community care and pure absolute love. But their activism wasn't always welcomed. As the mainstream gay rights movement gained traction in the 70s and 80s, it became more white, cis, and male. Trans people, especially trans people of color, were completely pushed out. At the 1973 NYC Pride March, Sylvia was told she could not speak, but she took the mic anyway and delivered a fiery speech calling out the gay movement for turning its back on the trans community, which, rightfully so, this is what she said. "Y'all better quiet down. I've been beaten, I've been raped, and y'all treat me this way, I will not put up with this shit." It was raw, it was real, and it was revolutionary. Part 4. Struggle, Loss, and Legacy. The years that followed were not easy. Marsha struggled with mental health issues. She was repeatedly harassed, arrested, and beaten. In 1992, her body was found floating in the Hudson River. Police ruled it a suicide, but her friends and community believe it was murder. To this day, the exact cause of death remains a mystery, and we still don't have justice. Sylvia, too, experienced homelessness, addiction, and trauma, but she never gave up. She kept fighting, especially during the AIDS crisis when trans women were often left to die. In the early 2000s, just before her death in 2002, Sylvia was working to build trans-inclusive shelters and healthcare systems. Both of these women were rejected by society, and sometimes even by the very movement they helped start, but they never stopped showing up for each other and for us. So today, we should, and I hope that we do, say their names with pride. Part 5. The impact today. Because of Marsha and Sylvia, here's a few things that we now have. Transgender visibility and the rights movement. Pride parades that honor queer resilience. Mutual aid networks led by trans activists. Organizations like the Marsha P. Institute continuing the fight. A richer, more inclusive queer history that refuses to forget those who were first to fight. They are the mothers of our movement. So here's what I want us all to remember. Marsha and Sylvia were not just symbols. They were human. They laughed, they struggled, they sparkled, they fought, and they loved deeply and fiercely. And as we continue to celebrate Pride this month, as we march in the streets, as we post on social media, and we protest and we party, we owe it to them to remember that this movement started on their margins by Black and brown, trans, and gender nonconforming people who had nothing but gave us absolutely everything. So, for what's left of Pride, if we haven't already, let's fight like Sylvia. Let's love like Marsha. And let's take care of each other like they took care of us. Because, need you know reminding, the revolution is far from over. And on next Tuesday's episode of Hot Air, our full-length episode, I'm going to do a little comparison of the past and the present, because I feel like a lot of things that are happening right now currently are mimicking some of the things that happened in the past. We're going to be talking about the AIDS crisis and also talking about HIV/AIDS research funding, which is being cut right now. We're going to talk about transgender lives back in the 60s versus how they are now. A lot of things are being rolled back, as in the 60s, they were just fighting for their rights in general. And there's going to be so much more. There's a lot of comparisons. It's actually very interesting, but also very frightening that it feels like we're, like I said before, turning back the clock, rewinding everything, going back to how it used to be, which I would love for us all to move forward. Thanks again for tuning in to this sweet little hot flash episode of Hot Air. If you're not following me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod, and share this episode with your friends, your fam. My new favorite saying is share it with your ex. You should just randomly text your ex who you haven't talked to in like 5 or 10 years. Just send them the link to this episode for no good reason. Well, I guess that is it for now. So stay tuned. Keep celebrating your Pride Month. I hope everyone is staying safe out there, and I will see you next Tuesday.